Iran Revolution, day 33. That's what we're talking about here. It is Thursday, the 29th of January, 2026. And what we're seeing right now happening in Iran is more coming out about more executions and killings and slaughters by the IRGC of Iranian people who do not want the Ayatollah to continue to oppress them and run a dictatorship over them. And right now, the U.S. is preparing some kind of kinetic action. Whether or not they go through with it is a matter of politics, diplomacy, etc. Countries like Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia are leaning on Trump diplomatically not to fire any shots and to resolve everything through diplomatic means. They have basically been offered an olive branch by President Trump, who recently sent out a post saying that basically he wants them to make a deal that they would have no nuclear arms whatsoever. And he didn't say anything about all the other horrible things that they're doing, spreading terrorism around the world, slaughtering their own people, doing all kinds of horrible things, oppressing women, etc., etc. None of that. So to me, it seems like a bit of clickbait, or not clickbait, sorry, head fake, what Trump is saying to them. But instead of accepting that, what they did is they said, sure, we're open to talks, but, it has to be on mutual interest and understanding. Well, what mutual interest and understanding does Iran have with the U.S. right now? Other than the flow of oil through the Gulf is important for the world. And to that end, the IRGC head came out and said all U.S. vessels must leave the Persian Gulf ASAP, or should leave the Gulf ASAP, in order to prevent, violence, etc. And that's after Iran's government, the dictatorship, threatened Gulf states, basically saying that if the U.S. attacks Iran, or specifically the dictatorship and the IRGC targets, that they would view that as a reason to attack not just U.S. assets in the region, but of course Israel, and specifically they said the heart of Tel Aviv, but to them it's all Israel, right? They don't care. And they would also target Gulf countries. So hello there, if you're in the live stream, welcome. By all means, like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Let's get the word out about what's happening. So basically, we're at a situation where it's a bit of a Mexican standoff right now, where each side is waiting for the other to blink. Meanwhile, the people in Iran continue to protest. Yes, in slightly smaller numbers than before in each particular place, but overall, still very significant amounts of protests and demonstrations trying to get this revolution happening. And you do have more people showing up with weapons fighting against the IRGC, and that is getting very little coverage. But basically, we're seeing a very slow disintegration of the willpower of the people who want this revolution to succeed, because it's been now more than a month since they started, and they've been hearing help is on the way for a long time. The U.S. assets are in place. The Abraham Lincoln is within striking distance of necessary targets. There are plenty of assets in the area. There's even B-2 bombers in the area. There's really no reason other than politics and diplomacy for help not to be physically being delivered right now. But as with all things, when it comes to matters of war, politics and diplomacy play a significant role. And so do other factors, economics, etc. So that's the situation that we have right now, vis-a-vis what is going to, what is happening right now. And what is likely to happen next? Well, we're very likely to see some kind of resolution to this in the coming days, because there's only so long that the US will sit there basically on a hair trigger waiting for the Iranian dictatorship to make a next mistake. So if the Iranian dictatorship stops killing people, and if they negotiate with the US and agree to stop all nuclear arms production under strict supervision from US and international organizations, there is a hair's chance that this dictatorship will survive yet another day. And then my skepticism, which I have held firm since the beginning and before this launched, even, if you remember, because I was having these discussions with an Iranian dissident before any of this was happening, more than a month before. He was saying, yeah, this dictatorship's going to be gone by the end of the year. And it was the end of January, then middle of February, whatever. And he kept pushing it back. But, come the end of December, he was already saying, look, you see, it's happening. I said, well, I'll give you the credit that something is happening, but there's still no guarantee it's going to happen yet. And I still remain skeptical. And even now, despite all of the assets in place and all of the unusual circumstances that we have, you still have to maintain a level of skepticism, because we're talking about a decision that needs to be made ultimately by Donald Trump. And if he's known for anything, it's for doing something that people don't expect. Right now, people kind of expect him to do something. What they expect him to do is up for grabs. There is a lot of evidence that shows that he is going to do something. But there's frankly no shortage of evidence to suggest he may do nothing. So he's really letting the world kind of wonder, what is he going to do? And he's had his various members of cabinet and ambassadors and talking heads also give conflicting information. So Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has said that the U.S. has enough assets now to defend its forces in the region, which is kind of funny because obviously the U.S. always has enough forces to defend itself in the region, or enough assets to defend its forces in the region. But this is kind of like a signal saying, oh yeah, now we're prepared to defend ourselves. Yeah, they're not just prepared to defend themselves. You don't send this kind of force. It says 30 to 40,000 forces are in the area, troops, whatever, plus all these other assets. You don't deploy that kind of force for nothing. You don't deploy all those aircrafts and all those Navy vessels for nothing. So on the one hand, they're giving a lot of information saying, yes, there's something going to happen. But on the other hand, you have people like Ambassador Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, saying we really hope that there won't be a war, and that we're doing everything we can to avoid one. At the same time, much as they're avoiding a war, they're trying to, they're preparing ever more to have one. So that is, of course, part of the method of giving misdirection, so the enemy does not have a clear line on what the attacker might do, right, or is likely to do. Of course, they have to prepare in Iran. The government has to prepare on the assumption that the U.S. is going to attack, because what else can they do? Assuming that the U.S. won't do anything would be really dumb of them, obviously. And the U.S. has to keep maintaining that lack of clarity in its communications, which of course drives the protesters nuts, because they're literally putting their lives on the line 24/7 every time they go out and protest, and they're documented by the IRGC, they're adding themselves to some pretty seriously dangerous lists, right, of people that are likely to be targeted by the IRGC. So it makes it very difficult for the protesters to maintain this kind of momentum, despite getting messages occasionally, seeing messages from Trump saying, keep going, we're coming to help you. And despite seeing messages from Shah Reza Pahlavi saying, you know, you're not going to die in vain. I look forward to coming to Iran. Something is going to happen. You know, he's promised that to them multiple times. Well, whatever that something is, it better not be too little or too late. And a lot of people there are starting to feel like it is. And if we get to that point, you know, if the people stop coming out, and if they just kind of quietly accept the fact that they've lost this fight, there is the probability that things will not change there for the better. What are you writing here? Anyway, I see your message. By all means, like and subscribe. I appreciate it. So what will happen, right? Well, we know a decision will be made, even if that decision is not to decide. Even if the decision is, let us sit on the back burner for now. We got bigger fish to fry, or smaller fish, but that we can capture more easily, like low-hanging fruit. For example, Cuba, or other things in the area, without being too specific. There are a lot of other places that the U.S. can focus on. Also, Taiwan remains a contentious issue, especially because of the Greenland thing, because of China's relationship with the U.S. and with Taiwan, and the issue with Greenland. And Russia, of course, with China are both on the same page about the Greenland thing. In other words, they're not pleased about it, right? Because it deeply affects their shipping routes. And if they had access to the shorter shipping routes through the Arctic Circle area, it'd be a lot easier for them to have more trade and gain a bigger share of the economic pie. And the U.S. wants to avoid that, not only for the U.S.'s economic defense, but also for Canada's and the EU and NATO's economic defense against China and Russia. So it's a big hairball. And on top of that, this of course affects what happens right here in Israel vis-a-vis Hamas and Gaza. And what that whole process looks like with disarming Hamas now that the last hostage is home, and Hamas really does not have any more excuses to not disarm. So that's where we're at. And I will keep you guys posted. Go ahead and like and sub, and see you in the next one. Shalom.